Hi, hello, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely fantastic that you have actually dared to come in here, seeing that the weather outside is so brilliant. We have two absolutely fantastic things to offer. In fact, we have three things to offer. First of all, we probably have the coolest space in this whole complex, so you can actually concentrate whilst you listen to us. We are probably the session with the longest title, and I'm very sure that you have intentionally chosen this session to come to discuss with us, because I'll make a commitment. I'll get you to talk with our absolutely fantastic panel in a second. And then, of course, the third point is we have probably one of the best panels here at the ITF. So with that, I can actually sit down. We're talking about the future. We're talking about the challenges of the future. We're talking about those things that we can already see. And maybe towards the end of the discussion, we'll also talk about some things that might just be around the corner and that one don't quite have an answer for. Let me just quickly run through my panel before I actually sort of give the gentlemen their first word and their first chance to talk to. On my right, we're very honored to have Jean Todt. He is the president of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, and that's as much French as you hear from me today. This man is probably breathing petrol ever since he's started working in the automobile sector a couple of years ago. He's, did you actually work together with Michael Schumacher? You did, yes. Okay, so from a German point of view, thank you very much for actually enabling Michael Schumacher to do what he did. Meanwhile, he's actually sort of got a split personality, because he's still in charge of those who are very, very fast, so Formula One. And on the other side, he's in charge of all the organizations of the people like you and me who drive normal cars and who want to have a little bit of road safety. Like if you're in Germany, you're in the ADSC. If you're in the US, you're in the AAA, and whatever organizations they are, so you're representing them as well. That was a much longer introduction than I planned. The gentleman on my left is definitely from a northern country, as you can see, and also here by his name. Olaf Persson is the president of AB Volvo and the CEO of the Volvo Group. I must be very careful introducing this properly. Some of you know that it's not so much about cars, it's about vehicles, and to those we count both buses and trucks among these vehicles. The gentleman on the right of Mr. Todt, or on the left, whichever way, and that's a good thing, you know, the right winger, left winger, it's all a question of perspective, is Andreas May. He's Director Smart Connected Vehicles of Cisco Systems, the US, and of course, also this morning we had quite a number of, I would say, IT people here with big data. I know that you're also dealing with big data, but we want you here in a different function, and you know what you want to say. Let me continue on that side. We have now a very flexible young man, Brian Walker-Smith. He has both automobile knowledge, but the reason why he's here is because he knows a lot about law, and of course, being as young as he is and being probably member of that sharing economy age group, certainly those that started it, he is concerning himself with the legal aspects of that all. We get into a detail later on. Mr. Doi is Kazuhiro Doi. He's the head of Nissan Research Center and Alliance Global Director of the Nissan Global motor company, and thank you very much that you're here, and you're also sort of the R&D man, and therefore you can show us a pathway into the future. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, this man is from here. He is sort of, this is your home turf, Leipzig. He is not only responsible for the BMW plant, but also of the planning. And you all know that our Chancellor has made a promise to all of us here in Germany, saying that we want 1 million e-cars by 2020. And Mr. Stramm has committed, together with his company, of course, that, and inverted commas, given the right political incentives, we can do it. And we're going to ask you how you're going to do it in a second. But first of all, ladies and gentlemen, the nice thing is a place like this, the International Transport Forum, is also the feeding ground for new coalitions. And one of the aspects that we're going to be talking about, and of course automated driving might be a solution for better safety, is a question that you're going to answer in a second. You're actually going to be signing just after this panel, and you might actually have to run off, an agreement with the ITF saying that you are going to get both resources together in order to monitor and hopefully decrease accidents. How? Yes, please.
No, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the presentation. Yes, indeed, we are going to sign in less than 2 hours an agreement with ITF, which will allow to have a more precise database about road accidents around the world. I mean, as you rightly mentioned, FIA has 2 pillars. One, which is probably more well-known to the public, which is regulating and legislating motorsport around the world. We are present in 141 countries with 236 clubs. And the other pillar is what we call the mobility pillar, and it's supporting road users. And as you mentioned, also, we are represented in different countries. In Germany, for example, it's ADAC. ADAC has 19 million members, which is a huge amount of motorists. And road accident is one of the worst scourge of the society. You have every year 1.3 million people who die on the road. You have every year 50 million people who are injured. And we need to address this pandemic, and to address it, you need to make plans on education, on law enforcement, on road infrastructures, on vehicles, and being partner with ITF will allow us to address in a more precise way this scourge together with organizations around the 141 countries.
Can I just sort of for one moment linger on this issue? Is the incidence of road accidents more biased towards developing countries than developed countries?
Yes,
and therefore
of course. 90% of those accidents are occurring in developing countries. And I mean, this morning ITF published the results of ITRAD, which is representing about 30 countries, where there is some progress, probably not enough, but there is some progress. There are still a lot of fatalities, which are increasing in a way with pedestrian, motorbikes, cyclists, on cars. It's improving, and developed countries have made sensational progress. Unfortunately, developing countries, we will speak about connected cars. They don't have access to all those new technologies, and they are using all cars on all roads without education, without law enforcement, and that is a killer.
And you're going to address that killing issue together with ITF. Thank you so much. When Monsieur Todd maybe runs off at 10 to 6, don't worry, he's going to do a great thing. Monsieur Doi-san, you have actually sort of prepared a couple of points underlined with a couple of PowerPoint pictures, but the rule here is not to make sort of half an hour PowerPoint presentation. You're going to stick to your 4 minutes, and the 4 minutes are going to be linked to safety and to other issues.
Okay, so thank you for introduction, Connie. So now Mr. Todd said, the 90% of the traffic accident is occurring in the developing countries. But I'm sorry, let me focus more like advanced technology now in my session. Of course, including safety, the car OEMs have been challenging the kind of 4 essential negatives of the car, like environment, energy, and traffic congestion and safety. And the ultimate goal of all of them are 0. And in the histories, the situation is very much improved thanks to the development of the technologies. And now I'm been working for the industry about 30 years, and I remember that about 20 or 15 years ago, the kind of the keyword or the optimization. But now we are facing that kind of a limit of the optimize car. And today, the key technology are electrification and intelligence. And electrification can provide us more, potential to go to the zero emission. And the intelligence can bring us more potential for the safety. And Nissan has a huge effort to commercialize the intelligent safety technologies like intelligent cruise control, distance control, or the lane departure prevention, and so on, in the safety shield concept, which you can see in this slide. And the safety shield is a concept which have a philosophy, car protects the people. And with this concept, Nissan technology development is very consistent. And throughout the technology development, now the car performance is much, much higher than before. So the essence of the driving is the perception and decision and operation. And all of those performance, now the car have two digit more lead over the human driver skill. And those are the enablers of the autonomous car. And however, what we are intending is not a robot car. Probably we can make a car which can pass through the 10 centimeters gap in the 200 kilometers per hour. But that is not for the customer. And and also the human drivers integrate more, the information resources through their driving. For example, you try to avoid the driving in the rain or in the night. Why? So because you have a strategy, or you are integrating the strategy with your experience. So, and now, the car is more and more intelligent by mixing the information from the networks. So today, the car can be the kind of the touch point of those three networks: communication network, road network, and the electric network. And the car gonna be more like intelligent, like a human driver-like, through using that information through those networks. And we are expecting to make the car more intelligent to fit the car to fit the drivers for the future. So that is what we are thinking now from the technology point of view.
How autonomous would you care that these cars should be? Like how much influence should the driver still have, and how much would you say, well, our technology is so advanced, we can lean back and let the driver sleep?
Okay, so so now I never can say we can allow the driver to sleep, of course. So still we have always the technology has to be evaluated step by step. Not only because of the technology evolution, but also the acceptance of the customer and society. We never can jump. And that's why the first mission of the autonomous car is to contribute the safety. That is what we're thinking.
Thank you so much. I would like now to turn to Mr. Persson. And when I read your notes, or rather the notes that were sort of communicated with us, there is something called platooning, which I had not associated with either trucks or buses up to now. What is part and parcel of that idea behind the platooning that you are going to achieve?
I think when we started to look into, and we are part of and very much a contributor to the transport system, and the transport system is of course the blood circulation in our society. And we created a vision saying that we want to be the world leader in sustainable transport solutions. And then we have to ask ourselves, what do we mean with sustainability? Sustainability very often is equalized to the environmental impact. And that is, of course, important. But The answer was actually just in front of us, and that is the UN definition of sustainability from 1987, which actually encompasses and says that to get a really sustainable society, you need three parts. You need environmental sustainability, you need economic sustainability, and you also need social sustainability. And looking at that and comparing that with what we believe is the absolute most important thing, that for the societies being sustainable is to create an efficient transport system. And in the sustainability, of course, safety is a very, very important part. But the efficiency of the transportation system is what we then look at when we develop our new technologies. That is the guiding star to make sure that we contribute on all three aspects. And we should remember that economic sustainability and social sustainability and also environment looks different in different parts of the world. We are active in 192 countries out of the 218 in the world. And therefore we need also to make sure that we develop in accordance with the regions we're in. And in that context, ICT or connectivity of course comes in as a major and very good facilitator to drive that sustainability. And if you take that one step further, bearing on your comments, we have now started then a technology which we call platooning, where we actually either run trucks that are connected electronically with each other, running very safe and running very close distances, saving a lot of space, but also take care of one of the biggest problems that we have, and that is actually the differentiation in speed. If you look at a lot of the queuing and a lot of the traffic jams, it's actually about differentiation in speed. We took that one step further and said, if we can do it trucks by trucks, why can't we do it truck to cars? And basically then creating in congested area electronic trains, platoons, where you actually connect up your car behind the truck. And thereby you achieve a number of things, safety definitely, but also fuel consumption, because running behind a truck who sort of takes the wind for you, you are running much more efficiently and of course in a very much more constant speed, and thereby again addressing it. And we took it one step further, and now we're looking at then in cities, actually creating an extremely flexible system by connecting buses together, and then creating in rush hours, you can connect a number of buses to take care of high density city center areas. And when you're then approaching out to the more remote areas, you disconnect the buses, and the buses continue out to the different ports and collect or leave people. And I think the key issue here is innovation and the technology, and we have to make sure that in order to get this accepted, you were touching upon it, we need demonstrators. We need to actually test it in the real world. We need to make sure that the public get used to it and also get the trust in it, and we need to make that. But we also need to work hand in hand with society, with states, and not at least now raised very much by the autonomous driving, that is the legislation. How will the legislation follow the technology in order to make this happen? So that was a very long answer to a very short and direct question. I do apologize.
That's fine. The first statement is definitely longer than the rest when we're in the middle of the discussion. Can I just sort of clarify something? You said it's not quite autonomous driving, but it is sort of semi-autonomous. Once you are sort of linked in a platoon, the driver still has sort of the responsibility for bus or truck, whatever he or she is in, but you are connected. So are we already capable of sort of, being patient enough to stick behind another vehicle?
I think that the advantages when you look at it, if you can do that and you get the advantages of going into a city, which you today sitting in hours with an average speed of perhaps 10 kilometers to get in somewhere, and in the future, even if it's not perhaps 100 or 110 kilometers an hour, at least it's a steady going 50, 60 kilometers an hour, moving ahead and getting you on a very predictable time, which I think is the most irritating thing when you don't really know when you are arriving. I think that would be a lot of acceptance. And accessing and de-accessing from this platoon will be very easy. You drive up next to one or at the back end, you push a bottom, it goes a signal to the truck's accepted, connect to your car, and then you just follow.
Thank you very much, and we're relatively close to that. Mr. Schramm is actually addressing an issue that has been talked about and that's been around for quite a number of years, and therefore probably expectations are relatively high, because I believe it was 5-6 years ago that sort of, you know, everybody had this hype about driving. Certainly, again, I have to sort of qualify, definitely here in Germany, but I remember also in the UK, and I'm very sure in France as well. And now we are there. I have two questions. The first of which is, do you find that that people sort of are already a little bit bored and sort of now not, and finally it's there? Or is there still that same kind of impetus now that you can actually show them the finished product that actually looks as sexy as the car that's outside there?
Well, let me first of all thank you that we are here. Yeah, now we are here with our products, but these products are not only cars. We are not talking about only cars. The i3 and the i8, BMW i is not just an electric vehicle, it's a holistic approach. We have a complete new car concept. We have a complete new production concept, new processes. We have developed and used complete new materials to build these cars. We have a 360, we call it 360-degree service. That's a mobility service, especially for the electric mobility. We have a complete new design also, a new brand, and of course we got new customers. So with BMW i, we talk about electric mobility and specified solutions for the electric mobility. And with that, the sustainability, and we talked already about sustainability, is very important for the BMW Group. And especially the BMW i brand took the sustainability over the whole value chain. So we want to show that now for the sustainability we are on a new level. We want to present a new level, not only for using the car, we want to show it for producing the car, for the using the materials, for the recycling, beginning at its suppliers. And let me give you an example to the sustainability. In terms of production, we reduce the consumption of electric energy by 50%. We reduce the consumption of water by 70%. And for example, we produce electric energy for our plant with our own windmills on our plant. You can see it from here. But this next thing is electric mobility is just in the beginning. There's a real high potential, growth potential. And we are sure that electric mobility is the right answer in present, but of course in the future for zero emission traffic, especially in urban areas. And it is not a hype. It is, I'm sure, and we are sure, it is a long-term success. Of course, the cars has to be attractive. We have to meet the customer requirements. I would say the cars has to be sexy. And we see it with our cars. We have a great demand for these cars and for the mobility services. The third point is the electric mobility creates many opportunities. It's a kind of impulse now for, we call it iconic change, which give us new perspectives. And for example, in that era, we develop new process, new materials. We bring it to other cars, to conventional cars, to hybrids, and and we create new professions and so on. So it's a very big chance, and we are very happy about that.
I have to share something. When we were sort of discussing beforehand, Mr. Todd automatically asked, and how far can you actually go with that e-car? Because, of course, that's an important question. My question would be, what about the carbon footprint? Can you answer both of our questions?
Well, you mean how far we can go?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. With the i3, with a full electric car, right now we go about 160 kilometers in the range. The plug-in hybrid out there, the i8 has a range over 500 kilometers, 550 kilometers. Of course, it's a plug-in hybrid. When you take the i3 with a range extender, you have a range close to 300 kilometers.
That's fine. And the carbon footprint, not in production, you walk the talk, so you try to produce sustainably. But one of the reasons why we're going for e-drive is to reduce the carbon footprint. How far have you gone along the road?
Well, you mean the carbon footprint, excuse me?
The carbon footprint, yeah.
Yeah, we use the carbon for the chassis.
No, sorry. You know, this is an automobile maker.
The CO2
this is a
footprint.
political
Excuse
journalist.
Me, the CO2 footprint.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
of course. Well, we made really detailed calculations about that footprint, and we can reduce the footprint about 50% of this car. So about the whole chain, and this is quite significant, I think. And but these are a lot of steps to come there. It's not only one step, there are a lot of steps. We use renewable materials and so on.
So not just your sleeves are rolled up, a lot of other people's sleeves are rolled up as well in the end.
People and a great team working, yes.
Mr. Meyer, Andreas, it was explained to me that Cisco has a great offering anyway, and we know, and I know Cisco, of course, out of my IT knowledge, and you know, you're great and wonderful, and then you suddenly realize you have a great network. You can actually sort of use all your knowledge and sort of transfer it into cars. That sounds rather simplistic. Is it? How difficult is it? And what can you bring, like, for example, to Mr. Person's R&D people?
No, absolutely happy to answer that question. If I could have my slides, that would be phenomenal.
The young man.
Wonderful.
Yep.
And I need the clicker.
Yes.
But let me start maybe, what is Cisco doing on this panel? A long time ago, I wanted to learn English, and I watched a TV series, some of you may know, Knight Rider. And I wasn't so keen about David Hasselhoff, but I really liked the car. And this is actually how I learned English. And today I'm in charge of smart connected vehicles at Cisco. And for those of you who don't know Cisco, Cisco connects things. And about 50% of all the traffic of the internet goes through our switches and routers. And we are at the cusp of an innovation that all of us are part of. And we call it the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything. And this transformation will affect all of us as we are sitting here, and it will actually connect, if I can connect, yes. It will connect things, it will connect data, it will connect processes, and it will connect people. And only if those four things happen, so let's start with the things. If you connect cars with parking places, with buildings, with businesses, with the cloud, with traffic lights, with your mobile phone, yeah, locking, unlocking your vehicle, for instance, this is where it all starts. But to really benefit from this, you also need to extract data, and I coined the term, the big data is really the fuel of the connected vehicle. A good example is the patent that Google recently filed, where a store can actually pay for you to come to the store, and they would pay for the trip that you take to get to the store. And this is really about not only providing data, but also connecting pools of knowledge. Yeah? The pool of knowledge, for instance, how safe is a driver in a car? What do you want to do at this particular point in time? Where do you want to go? Is there a friend around that you can speak to or kind of meet while you're on the road? And you need to connect these pools of knowledge to create value, either in form of an experience or in form of a monetizable service. The next thing that happens, and this is really the experience part, is where we actually go across multiple domains and we connect processes, for instance, of getting a cab, of renting a car, of riding a bus. So the multimodal idea is clearly a topic here. But also, well, you can have your shopping list sent to you by your wife, happens to me regularly, by the way, and then on the way you continue to do your shopping before you get home. And this is really connecting the processes to create value and to create experiences that make all our lives easier. And the last thing that happens is we connect people. And this goes towards the sharing economy. This goes towards sharing pretty much every vehicle that you can imagine, but also sharing your data and data for value. And our role in this whole ecosystem as Cisco is really to make this connection reliable, high performing, because we are talking about tremendous amount of data, and lastly, but most importantly, very, very secure, because you would not want anybody to intrude in the system and get access to your data or to your privacy. But this is really just the, let's say, Internet of Everything and how it affects transportation. If you think about the next step, how is it going to really transform businesses? And in our perspective, it's really driving disruptive innovation, as we call it. So if you look at the traditional auto company, they move from selling or building cars to delivering travel time well spent, to deliver experiences. And they need to connect other parts of the value chain, partners, to deliver this experience to their customers. And they not only need to connect the vehicle for that, they need to connect their value chain with partners. The next thing that happens is the mobility value chain will be integrated. So we have the ability to cross modes and to provide a better visibility what the best path is to get from point A to point B. Yet again, connectivity is at the center of it. The next thing that happens, and this is really a little bit contentious, so I'm looking forward to the discussion later on, the autonomous vehicle is coming. And in my perspective, the call is still out whether it's going to be the automotive industry or whether it's going to be the IT industry that is bringing the first autonomous vehicle to market, not just drive around, but really bring it to market that we all can buy it and it can take my daughter to soccer practice. And the question here really is who is going to be the winner of that? Because if you think about it, the capabilities are no longer, and I'm exaggerating intentionally, metal bending. It is more in the domain of high-powered processing power, of gaming, things like NVIDIA, for instance, is very good at, to preempt situations the car is going to get into. The next thing is really what I define here as a hybrid between personal and public mobility. Because essentially, when we have autonomous vehicles, the question is whether we have large shared vehicles and small shared vehicles, or small shared vehicles that attach to large shared vehicles for the longer haul and do the last mile just downtown. And the question again is out whether it's going to be the incumbent transportation, like transportation providers who provide public transportation vehicles, or is it the auto industry, or is it a completely new entrant in this domain? The next industry, and I'm nearly done, Connie, the next industry that is really affected by this is the insurance industry, because if we connect vehicles, if we have autonomous vehicles that prevent crashes from happening, 90% of crashes happen due to human error. If that is taken out of the equation, the insurance business, as we understand it right now, is under massive attack, because they make their money with our premiums that we pay them for the risk that we perceive. If the risk is gone, the premiums are reduced, and the business model of investing this money in the capital market to make money is no longer relevant. So they transfer into a assurance business, as we call it, the business of preventing crashes, as I dub it. And lastly, and I hope it's coming up, we believe that there is room, and I was really enthused to see this outside already, in exchange for data, a creation of an intermediary, an entity that actually collects data on your behalf, where every single one of us decides what data you want to share, with whom you want to share it, and at what price you want to share it. And then you get the value for it. And the platform to enable all of this is this data exchange that I illustrated here, which I think is the kind of emergence of a completely new breed of business. With this, I'm done.
Thank you very much for taking us into the graphics of a world that we partially already live in and partially are going to experience. I want Brian to comment on this because some of the remarks, especially sort of, assurance, there's also, all the legal system behind that. But I can almost, and I give you one sentence each, I can almost sort of hear you breathing in saying we're already doing that. So what I heard from you, Mr. Schramm and Mr. Persson, you're already doing part and parcel of it. So for you, the answer, is it the automobile OEMs or is it the IT guys? For you, it's you use the IT guys to enable your companies to continue to work. Is that correct?
I think the answer lies in the last picture about data sharing and business model building. And it will be a spider web. It will be different business models in the future, but it will be a place for each and every one of us. Building a truck or building a car is a very delicate system way of doing it, but it will be connected in a spider web with a lot of different business.
Mr. Schramm, and maybe Mr. Doi, would you also sort of one sentence on that?
It is a cooperation, of course. And it's a question of the concept. We have the car sharing, for example, and we drive the car sharing, we bring it. It's a rising business, it's an improving business, and of course we want to cooperate, and it's a cooperation.
Thank you, Mr. Doi. One sentence on, are you already doing it? Everything that we've heard from Mr. Mai?
Okay, so for us, they are the enablers. So definitely you have to cooperate. And I love Knight Rider. That is one of our dream of the car industries.
Okay, so I had to just sort of get that out of the way. Brian, you have sort of two hats. You're very knowledgeable about automobiles and everything else, but you're a young professor, you're somebody who is sort of deeply steeped into law, into legal aspects. Now we have two different developments. One, we have only, and I'm sorry I have to sort of refer to that without having the speaker here. We would have had a representative from Car2Go. Unfortunately, he got ill, so he's not there. So he would have been sort of the representative of the shared economy that we all talk about, and you all are reading articles, how much Uber is operating, how greatly their membership has increased. They're operating now in 100 towns around the world, just operated in Beijing. There are others, Lyft. This morning we had another operator of a shared economy business model up on stage. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is certainly what Mr. Persson is already bringing on the road, like sort of semi-autonomous automobiles and trucks and buses. And then we have sort of likes of Google that you see every day sort of running around south of San Francisco in Silicon Valley. So you don't turn your head anymore when you see a car without a driver, do you?
Well, I look to make sure someone's in it.
My question really is, it poses a whole new range of questions, including the one that Andreas has just mentioned about, who owns the data and can I actually sell my data to whoever gives me most money. This morning we came to the conclusion we're not going to talk about that because otherwise we're going to have the session filled with just that question. You as an advisor, as a law professor, how do you deal with these new questions?
Shake my head a lot. Gosh, it's actually really exciting. I mean, all of the presentations have been great. I like that you bookended this because the only thing sexier than a BMW is, I think, the law. Not sure if I can persuade you of that, but let me try. Here's the thing. I don't know what's coming. And as accomplished as everyone on the stage and in the room is, we don't actually know. So you've heard about all of these cool technologies that could come. And you're going to go back to your employers or your ministries and say, oh my goodness, we're going to have self-driving cars in, pick your number, 5, 10 years. And then immediately you're going to think about all of the things that that will mean for the world as you know it today. How your current business practices will apply to these new self-driving cars, how your current constituents will feel about privacy issues related to these cars. That's good, but that's wrong. Because extrapolating only the one thing that we're interested in and assuming that the rest of the world is going to stay the same is going to get us in a very different place. As Andreas pointed to, it's not just one technology, it's many things, many people, much data, many processes, all of which are going to change. So in 10 years, maybe we'll have self-driving cars at some level. They've been 20 years away since the 1930s. The good news is now they're only 10 years away, so ask me again in 10 years. But maybe we'll also get our supplies that we buy delivered by drone, or we'll print them out at our home on a 3D printer. And yes, today maybe privacy is an important issue in particular ways for many people, but those expectations could change in the future. They could strengthen or they could lessen. So the key, as we're dealing with a question of law or policy, which is my focus, or any other area, is to reach out. Reach out not just to the established players and say, well, what do you need? What would help you? Don't necessarily give it to them, but ask. Reach also to new players, new entrants, and say, how would you change the world and how could I help? So maybe it's individually owned 2-ton vehicles that roam the street, or maybe it's a shared system of smaller shuttles that provide transportation to the elderly, to business or university campuses. It's a field that stretches beyond just transportation into many other fields, in the sense of all of your other colleagues in other ministries should know about self-driving cars, about connected cars, about the sharing economy, and you should know about the exciting developments that they're facing as well.
Just to sort of put you a bit more on the point, that was a rather general and wonderful answer, but we would want some advice. Let's just take the example of Uber. The guy running public policy there has said basically we have sort of 3 buckets that we can serve. The ones are open to new technology, and they say, well, why don't you come into our city and we'll just try it out. The other ones are just shaking their shoulders and then we're going to observe, and then you have cities like Brussels, for example, that say, no way, no go here. And I tell you, last year I did a taxi driver convention, and I tell you what, anyone from Uber would not be welcome there. But the question is, will we have a variety of legal frameworks that govern those kind of modern ways of transportation, including also the semi and the autonomous cars?
Necessarily. So I wrote an engineering-themed paper recently, and I dared to use the word probably. I said, well, this is probably legal, or this is probably applies. And the engineer who was reviewing it said, well, you can't write probably in a paper. Tell us yes or no. That's what we pay you for. And I'm like, well, law is a series of attempts to provide both flexibility for innovation and certainty, which also drives innovation. And we'll see different jurisdictions responding in different ways. Uber is a good example of a company that's very aggressive. So if the answer to their question, is this legal, is this allowed, is probably, well, they are going to say, yes, let's do it. Other companies are going to respond, no, let's not do it. And so you'll see the temperament of companies driving the deployment of these technologies as much as the actual law itself.
Are you worried about sort of the semi-autonomous driving and about potential backlash, or how much are you actually talking to lawyers when you have developed that technology that is a solution for society, for a reduction of emissions, that increases lifestyle, and yet what happens if something happens?
And that's a very important question, but I think we need to run through this in phases. I mean, we need to, by demonstrating the technology, showing that it is safe, that we have thought about it through. And I mean, at some point in time, someone took the leap and said, yeah, this airplane is safe. We have done all the checks, we have done it back then, and they started to fly with them. And sometimes you need to come to a point to say, we have done all the checks, we have done all the things we can do. This brings a lot of added value to the society. Now it's time to move ahead and start to implementing it. But in order to do that, you need to do two things. One is to test out which technology that is really going to make a difference. Today, with the easiness of actually adapting and putting, not technology, I would say, adaptations of technology on the road. Not all of these will be helpful. But by putting them in large-scale demonstration projects involving the public, you can start to see it. And then I think also you would have the policymakers starting to think in a different way. But until it's only on paper, until it's only a few cars here, until it's only on the test tracks, you will not get that engagement, you will not get the public to see the benefits, and therefore the public and policies that need to allocate money to start to get into large-scale demonstrations.
Yeah. If I may,
yeah, and then
it's really a question, I think, sometimes to think a little bit common sense. If you look at the facts today, 90% of crashes are human errors. If you install a system, and if you look at the track record of the auto industry, we are talking in a parts per million failure rates. So would it, in our right mind, make sense to prevent a system from coming to the market just because in a per million incident something could go wrong? I think we are in need of a framework to make that happen and to protect manufacturers who bring these systems to market.
Mr. Doi, and then I would like Mr. Todd to comment on.
Okay, so yeah, so now that you know this discussion is somehow focusing on the environment and safety, and the one of the important thing of those is that you know, if we cannot deploy the technologies, it doesn't help anything. So the big mission for us is how we can deploy it, and we have to have certain conditions to deploy or expand it to the world. So first of all, for example, the autonomous car, you say something about safety, and of course we have to carefully watch the regulation. But before that, maybe we have to prove that is safe enough and that is safer than the vehicle today, and that is what we are all the automobile industry doing today. So by doing the demonstration, by doing the social test. Of course, by doing the technology development. So that is what we have to focus on now. And then we are ready to start to deploy it. So that's all that I say.
How do you comment and how do your members comment the arrival of both this shared economy, in brackets, how are they members of the different automobile associations? Are they, if they're sort of like with Uber, what have you? That's one aspect. And do you see actually sort of an increase in the potential for safety through semi-autonomous, autonomous driving, and of course the safety technologies that are built into the cars and the car makers that are present here, and of course the others as well?
I mean, I must say it's fascinating to hear and to get more familiar to all those new technologies. And of course, our members, and depending from one country to another one, because you know, the population is such that very little people have access at the moment to those new technologies. And I mean, in one ideal world, we will be facing a situation where there is no more accident. And I mean, if you will apply all those new technologies, you will clearly and drastically reduce the number of fatalities and injured people around the world. But we must face the reality. And unfortunately, the reality is different. And again, if you prospect 2020, which is the end of this UN Decade of Action for Road Safety, I mean, we are aiming 2 million fatalities on the road and 80 million injured people. So it means that the reality, very little people will have access to all those new technologies. You know, we must bear in mind that half of the population have no access to drinkable water. Most than half of the population does not know yet what is a safety belt. do not know what is one helmet. So we have to, to combine with the future, the potential, which is absolutely amazing, sometimes even a bit scary. When we speak about an autonomous car, it will come. It has already happened as a prototype. But the reality is that most of the people, they don't have access to a normal, to a car which is less than 20 or 30 years old age. And we were talking about road infrastructure. A lot of all those new technologies are linked to modern road infrastructure, which is not going to happen before a lot of decades. So we are in a kind of fascinating time because we have on one side a unique new technologies occurring, and on the other side you have the poor reality of what the world is facing, and we have to try to combine the situation. And then to go back to our members, some of our members are very influential, very fortunate to have access to all those technologies, and a lot of our members, they don't have access to, we're talking about Uber, they don't have access to public transportation. So that's where we are.
Very, very fascinating topic. Straight away, Olaf, can I just ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to get ready to put your questions, statements to us in a second. And just to explain why I was grinning at you when you said no safety belt, I was quite astonished. It wasn't just the lack of the safety belt in Kathmandu in the taxi. It was the fact that I hardly had a seat. But there was sort of something resembling a car. So yes, the reality in different countries and even in the capitals is somewhat different from Stockholm, from Berlin or Leipzig.
And I think Mr. Todd has a very important point, and that was in my opening when we talk about sustainable transport solutions needs to be adapted to the reality that is there. And let me give you a very short and brief example. We have just developed the most safe truck ever built, at least by us, and we think in the world, here in Europe. It's have all the features in terms of safety and visibility, in terms of emergency braking, all of that. We could, of course, say that truck will be brilliant for India, for instance. The problem is that we could bring it into India, but we probably would sell one or two. It would not make a difference for India. So what we have done instead, based on our sustainability commitment, is that we developed in Asia, for Asia, by Asian engineers, a competitive product, a competitive range of family of trucks that is safer than the existing ones that are around. And thereby we're creating jobs, prosperity, and also a safer transport than it was before. And this is the evolution, I think, which sustainable transport solutions adapted to the different realities that we have around the world. And that is extremely important. This is a starting point, but you have much other things to do. So it's a very important point.
I would like to encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to sort of, put your views forward to challenge our panel. In order to do that, we just need your raised hand because there are two wonderful young ladies equipped with microphones. I already have 3 people with questions. So if the ladies come into the middle ground, and I see the lady at the back as well. So can we collect those 4 questions right at the moment? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, please.
My name is Erik Mark Huytem. I work for IBM. I have a question about the legal aspect. And I think the legal aspect is quite clear because the Geneva Convention already tells us that we are responsible for the behavior of our car or our horses, but the horses are not applicable here. So then it's not a legal question anymore. Then it's the trust of the driver, the trust in his car. And I would like to know from the panelists, when do you trust your car to take your decisions?
Thank you so much. The gentleman over there, could you share your name with us,
Yes.
maybe the company that you work for?
Okay, Alan Ross, I'm a specialist, a road safety specialist. I noticed 3 of the panelists mentioned 90% of the deaths, injuries are caused by driver error. While that may be true, that is what the policemen have written on usually on the forms. So normally in statistics comes out The reality is, why did that driver make the error? It may have been missing signs, may have been the road, could even have been the vehicle, because often the policemen don't know. So I think just the point I'm trying to make is, please don't assume it's always just the driver. I think you have to look at the other surroundings, environmental issues, which have actually caused that driver to make that mistake. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In defense of the driver, the gentleman in the third row, and then the ladies over there.
Yeah, Umberto Repetto, I'm Secretary General of the IRU, and I won't be asking anything related to my business. I want to ask a question as somebody who loves driving cars and motorcycles. And I think Jean-Todt would understand what I'm saying in his testosterone-enriched environment of Formula One, where we know that people love driving, people love acceleration. What do you do with the market? I mean, if we're building these fast cars, these fast accelerating cars, it's because there's a market out there that wants that wants to drive, that wants to feel the enjoyment of driving. So if we do go down this path of cars that we no longer drive, is there really a market for that? Or is this just something that we're saying it would be a nice to have and nice to be able to put out there so companies look good saying it, but does the market really want it? I mean, I'll tell you, I will not give up my car, and I will not give up my Ducati to let somebody else decide how I drive or steer that.
Can I ask you, are you wearing a helmet? Are you wearing proper attire when you go on your Ducati?
Complete.
Okay,
complete.
that makes a grand
Helmet,
difference
leather,
to the guys
yes.
in Hanoi who are sort of actually transporting goods that you probably need a lorry for on their motorcycles, not having a helmet. And so, yes, again, the qualification, but that was just our conversation. I will turn it on to the ladies, and then we'll go back on the panel.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Penny Harton, and I'm with the World Blind Union, and I'm the person you've seen walking around with the cute Labrador Retriever guide dog. I'm not going to laud the fact that one day I might be able to drive a car as a blind person, because, to be honest, personally, I would really like to know that there is someone who can see behind the wheel in case something does go wrong with the technology, with the environment, and so on. But what I would like to say is linking some of the comments that have been made throughout the day, talking about safety, talking about making sure that our environments are inclusive of all, to request and plead, I guess, with car manufacturers to really consider not just the driver, not just the car, but also to consider the pedestrians and the people who will be maneuvering around those vehicles. As all of you who now manufacture the quiet hybrid cars now know, those cars are virtually silent for blind people, and they have created many hazards. And I know you're all working on that, but it's really important that when new technology is developed, that we consider everyone who might be engaging with that technology, whether it be the driver, whether it be pedestrians and other persons. So this was just a comment and a request to all of you who are trying to keep all of us safe on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, especially the one aspect that you mentioned right at the beginning, but it also leads us back to the very first remark about the question of trust. You say you would not trust technology enough, being visually impaired, to actually sit in an autonomous driven vehicle. Is that, did I understand that correctly, madam? Yes, I suppose.
Yeah, well, just also for myself, whether I would trust that the autonomous vehicle would do what I wanted to do, but also as a blind pedestrian walking on the street,
okay.
I would want to know that the people behind the wheel, that at least there was somebody there who could react to faltering technology or environmental conditions such as black ice on the road or any number of things that could occur.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Now, I don't know who wants to start, but I think everybody here on the panel is being asked. I look at Brian because we've just talked about the fact, and you said in Silicon Valley there are so many test cars driving around, hardly anybody actually looks at them anymore. So would you trust one of those test cars for autonomous driving completely?
a lot of these very good questions have focused on the human. And your question of trust does as well. Unfortunately, humans are very imperfectly probabilistic. We will trust these vehicles far too soon until something bad happens, and then we won't. So several companies have done studies where they'll put someone in a car that they will describe as automated, or the person will figure out that it's has an advanced driver assistance system. And pretty soon, the driver is looking behind them and fuddling for their newspaper and starting to page through a book. They'd been in it for a few minutes. And that was enough to instill confidence, whether founded or misfounded. So in that respect, I would say we need to design for a range of users, a range of uses and misuses. My hope is that with respect to pedestrians, ultimately these safety systems could really change the urban dynamic, where pedestrians and cyclists can walk and ride confident that vehicles will stop, rather than being intimidated by the weight and the speed.
Andreas is already grabbing the microphone. Helmut lifted his finger earlier, so can we give him... Okay. Well, we have to decide. Helmut.
So, okay. Well, what I want to agree, well, for us, the automated self-driving car improves the safetiness, but we have to see the safetiness for the driver, for accident-free driving, that's the one hand. And on the other hand, we have to implement every pedestrian, and it has to be safe for every participant in the traffic. So, and from our point of view, of course, it's possible to create a fully automated driving up to from 2020 around, something like that. But we have to support, and we want to support the driver. He has the last decision to make if he want to go automatically or if he want to have some driving pleasure, for example. So it is a support, and it improves the safetiness as well.
Andreas?
Yeah, 3 points I would like to make. Yesterday we had the opportunity to discuss this at the World Economic Forum Task Force for Autonomous. And there was one scenario that came up that really got me thinking. And that was, let's say, an autonomous vehicle has two bad choices. On the left, a kind of critical situation, on the left-hand side is a mother with a child. And on the right-hand side is a grandma, and the car needs to decide how I can, which person to kill, essentially. So somebody needs to program this. But this also implies another question. You would need to know who is driving the car. So this brings up the question of, do you have an obligation to share information to, for instance, broadcast, hey, my system is not operationally, it's not working 100%, or do you have the right to protect this information? So all these things, do I trust the vehicle? I would say there are a lot of unresolved issues right now.
Brian is already saying that he might have an answer to that, and I'm reminded of Asimov's laws here, very much so. But between the devil and the deep blue sea, I'd rather turn to my left, and I have both Kazuhiro and Olaf wanting to comment on that, and then it's you, back to you.
Okay, so for the first question, can we trust the autonomous car or not? So please try that. Just after you go on the car, you can trust the car. So that's a reality. But you know that we have to be very, very careful also the over-trust. So if the driver over-trusts, then the driver can start something like that. So that is not the good usage. And in my introduction, I told that you are not aiming to create a robot car. So we want to create a car for the people. So that means that, you know, I think that to create an autonomous car is something like that. You know, there is a robot car which are equipped lots of the sensors or the actuators, but there's no heart. So what we have to do is that to put our heart on the car. And to do that, we have to know more and more about what the driver or what the people is, including a pedestrian. Otherwise, I believe the customer never accept that.
Olaf?
I think one way of looking at this is, of course, that you could have technology that actually sort of really assists. I mean, we have just installed now on our trucks an emergency braking system, and that means that the radar always keep track on the objects in front, measure the distance, and making sure that the distance doesn't shrink too fast. What we have seen is that drivers, and that is for personal cars and others as well, very seldomly recognize the object coming to them and don't apply the right brake force. So what we have developed is a three-step. First you get a warning, then you get a warning plus a little bit of braking, and if you don't do anything or enough, then the vehicle completely stops, and it stops with 1 decimeter in front because it's calculated exactly thousands of times per second, including the load you have on the truck, to make sure you stop 1 decimeter before the object. That is one thing. Another thing I would like to bring up is actually the fact that if you look at our infrastructure, we talk so much about the cars. The cars are getting intelligent and more intelligent. Coming back to the question about the pedestrian and the way we have around the cars. If you look at the infrastructure today and compare it to 1874, what are the major differences? Asphalt, a little bit wider, a lot more roads, and then the traffic lights. But there it basically stops. So when we're putting more and more intelligent cars on the road, more and more self-contained roads, we have not, as a societies all over the world, actually invest in the infrastructure. And just by combining the semi or total intelligent cars with a very accurate and active infrastructure, we can also help building a sustainable transport system for both passengers and goods.
We can do it in the case of tolls. Then we can build an infrastructure. So on one aspect, we're already on the right path.
I really have to change my statement. There are 3 things: asphalt, traffic lights, and tolls that has come since 1874. Okay, there was 3 things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I wish my car had had that technology 15 years ago when I was looking for my lipstick on the floor and crashed. But of course, that was irresponsible driving.
Speaking of the human driver, so I want to push back on Andreas' comment and so connect the point about humans being good drivers. Humans are tremendous drivers in specific situations. At the same time, they can get overwhelmed and they can get bored. We know why human error explains roughly 90% of crashes, at least in part. That's because people drink, they speed, they get distracted, they hit pedestrians, and they don't wear their seatbelt. This is the overwhelming number of crashes. This is the low-hanging fruit. Automation, we don't know that it has those solved, but if it can, if it gets to that point, that is the real accomplishment, and I don't want the hypothetical scenarios about who do you kill to distract from that. In fact, the answer is if an automated vehicle has to choose between striking an elderly woman and striking a pregnant woman, then the car was going too fast to begin with. That's the design flaw, and that's the flaw that humans make so often.
Well, thank you so much. We still have yes, you can applaud if you want. We still have that question of marketability, but you wanted to...
On the pedestrian side,
I think, pedestrian.
Because that's a good example for the Internet of Everything that I alluded to earlier on, because there's technology out there that dedicated short-range communication that some of you may know, that allows vehicle-to-vehicle communication, but also allows vehicle-to-infrastructure and vehicle-to-pedestrian communication. And there are concepts out there that put the same technology on mobile phones to be able to detect pedestrians or bikers with the same technology. So that's number one. Number two is we have a lot of cameras out there. And cameras are becoming smart. And so you can use these cameras to do analytics to identify pedestrians and broadcast the same messages to the vehicle to prevent them or to actually notice those pedestrians. So this is a very good example for what the Internet of Everything can do.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Mr. Todd, and then...
One word, because here it was addressed by Olaf Persson, road infrastructure. You know, when we speak about pedestrian, we must facilitate the life of pedestrian. And in a lot of roads around the world, I mean, you don't have a pass cross. And so, I mean, a pedestrian, and when we speak about children, you know, number one killer between the age of 15 to 29 is road accident. That's the number one killer. And a lot of those accidents are coming with pedestrian because there is no facilities for the pedestrian. So we need to address with governments around the world to modernize the roads and to allow children to be able to go to school in a comfortable way. And it does not happen.
So that's where investment should go, infrastructure investment. Let me sort of remind us of the question about, from our Ducati man, about the marketability of, well, I think in trucks it may be a no-brainer, but in cars, you know, safety and boring, and therefore not sellable, or sellable because it promises safety or a better carbon footprint, CO2 footprint. Where's the trade-off? I mean, you, Mr. Schramm, of course, have out there a car which I think Mr. Ducati, sorry, would probably even consider sexy. I don't know your taste, but you know, the car out there, I would think it's a man's car, definitely a man's car. So still, you're putting a hell of a lot of money in there. You must believe in the marketability of it. Why?
Well, we believe in the market for that car, of course. And yeah, this car is both. This car is very sexy, but it's also very safety. We have a lot of systems with that car. And that car is also a part of BMW i, a part of all these services we give to the market, to the customers. And we see that the customer also call for that. That's a request of the customers, and they use it. We see they are really happy about that. So both works, and we have to bring both to the market. I don't think that we can bring cars only safety or only sexy. That doesn't work, especially for premium products. That's not possible for the future. So.
Yeah. Doi-san, same question to you.
Okay. So yes, maybe the question is that, you know, autonomous car is fun or not. So, but you know, if we think about the daily life, that going too fast or you know, drive very fast is not only the way to enjoy the car. So, for example, suppose you are driving somewhere beautiful with your family. So, and if your son or daughter say, you know, Dad, look at that. So, can you do that? So you have to concentrate to the drive. But you know, such a kind of support function can give you some time to enjoy the scenery with your son or daughters. So that's another fun. So to speed fast is not only the fun of the driving. So I think that that we have lots of the potential through such a kind of supporting functions to enjoy the car life more.
And also, maybe from some other discussions, different people have different choices. So it might be quite good to have certain offerings. Yeah. This is a time, and Andreas, hold that thought.
In one thought.
No, hold it.
Okay.
Hold it. Hold it. Because we have a time requirement here. And no. You should all stay. But I've made a promise and I've made a sort of threat. Because, of course, the gentleman sitting next to me has probably a long overview of promises made in the automobile industry, of promises not kept, of promises that were not made, kept. So what do you think is going to be in 20 years? Are all these things that we have been discussing, i.e. sort of societal changes due to the fact that we want to share cars, that we don't want to own cars, that we have the requirement of safe cars that might not be all that sexy, except for a couple of exceptions. Is that something that you see, or what do you see? Share your vision with us, please.
I mean, it's a difficult question, but maybe to foresee what will be motor industry in 20 years, you should see what it was 20 years back. and or what it was 1 century back. And I mean,
you're not that old, so
not as much, but still, if you see the evolution about the motor car industry is absolutely fascinating. And what we have been discussing this afternoon, I mean, if we can achieve most of what has been said, has been presented, will be already something fantastic. And what is very important also is that there is a passion, you know, and I mean the gentleman, as you were mentioning, Mr. Ducati, there is a passion about the car, which remains. It has been one evolution, and when you see the fascination for all cars, the fascination for the actual car, the fascination about the vision for the future, is something absolutely sensational. And you know, human being, we don't have sometimes. I mean, there are a lot of concern, but there is this concern of improving mobility, making transportation more affordable to mass market, and enjoy. And what was mentioned by Kazwir is very important also. I mean, enjoy driving. You know, enjoy driving. And I must say, at the moment, unfortunately, due to congestion, due to a lot of problems, you enjoy less driving. And I really hope that in 20 years, when probably the park of vehicles, which is about 1 billion now, will be multiplied by 2, with 2 billion cars. The problem is, how are we going to improve congestion? How are we going to improve environment? And that are the questions which we have to face, and that's why it's probably one of the priorities of the government and one priorities of manufacturers and organizations like the FIA and its members, to not only to see what will be the car, but what will be the overall situation in motoring.
Thank you so much. And now we know that you've got to run off and do the good thing, sort of increase safety in the future by getting this alliance going. Thank you very much for having been here. And now, Andreas, your turn. I hope that you have held that thought, just to remember what you wanted to say earlier.
No, I forgot it completely. No. You know, in those discussions about autonomous, I sometimes think we always think about the either or. It's either autonomous or not. I think it's an end option. There are situations where I would want to drive autonomous, and there are other situations where I would want not to drive autonomous. If I have a vehicle that can do both, I'm good. Yeah, so I think that's an important issue. The other element is we actually did a survey to your earlier question, and we asked 1,500 people whether they would trust a driverless vehicle. 57% in 10 countries actually said yes, we would trust a driverless vehicle. And then we asked the question, would you trust the vehicle to drive your children? And again, like a little bit less, around 45, I think, still said they would trust to drive their children.
That sounds rather fascinating. We have time for 2 more questions from your side. There's one gentleman who is eager to go, and there's a lady sitting next to him who is also eager to put a question. And if you are short, then a 3rd question, and then we're going to pick it up on here. So the gentleman who was first. Yes, it's working. Okay, so, our technicians work well. Trust them.
Georgios Yaris, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Actually, the Internet of Everything at some point will have to cross borders.
Can you put the microphone a bit closer to your mouth?
The Internet of Everything, no, it works, thanks, will at some point have to cross borders, and the reason is that transport does not stop at the borders. And I'm talking about the flows of cargo, of freight, of passengers, drivers. How far and how fast do you think that the process of formulating and forming the international regulatory regime and international standards is moving? Is it moving fast enough to catch up with the development and deployment of innovations from the industry side? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The lady next to him.
Thank you.
Oui.
I'm senior economist, and my question relates to the follow-up costs. We are implementing a lot of new systems, new technologies, new devices, and we're using a lot of them. And all of these systems need to be maintained, need to be upgraded, need to be mitigated. And we are having a technology and device mix, so a very complex situation. So has anyone looked into the costs of doing all this for the end user, for the system provider, or the system and system provider? And the second question is related to your example with the safety of a pregnant woman. Most of these technologies used are based on waves and frequencies, and we are using a tremendous amount of those technologies. How do they interact with the human body? So one device might be harmless, but the big amount of all these frequencies and waves, who is looking into the negative side effects on the human body and the human health? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. And there was one lady that is left.
Oui, c'est bien moi. Bonjour, je suis Madame Anne Golande. Je fais partie d'une agence sur la coopération et le développement.
Well, I am in charge of a work group on sustainable development in France. I have two questions. When it comes to marketing transport means, is it possible to develop a leasing system at an international level for such a new type of autonomous vehicles? I mean, this would be very interesting for Africa, for instance, in cooperation with Europe, so Africa and Europe.
We weren't quite prepared for the French, but thank you very much for your question. So the cooperation is also going to be an aspect.
Je peux toujours répéter, hein?
Let's kick off with the question again of the legal aspect. You cross borders, and maybe Andreas, that's also something for you. Brian, you're my man for the legal side. Poor guy.
There was also a question about the Geneva and Vienna Conventions on road traffic. And I think that's a good indicator of the competing timelines. The Vienna Convention road traffic looks like it will be amended within the next year. So it's remarkable progress for an issue that is really just coming to the fore, and that would be amending to clarify that automated vehicles are in many circumstances actually permitted. As we're talking about other realms of regulation, the technology is necessarily going to surpass what regulators are capable of addressing. In some ways that's good, because if you regulate too far in advance, you get the wrong answers and you lock people in. So I think the goal for whether we're talking internet connectivity or automated vehicles is to create that space, provide as much certainty as possible, make some guesses, realize that they're going to be wrong, but hope that those guesses are on the surplus side rather than on the restrictive side.
Andreas, you look like you want to answer, and then I see, Helmut as well.
No, we had this very discussion about the free movement of data in the World Economic Forum session on the hyper-connected world as well. And there is certainly a need to do this. We have some countries that don't even allow to move this data outside of the country. And in a world where you want to take advantage of the value of this data, this is highly impractical.
You must have looked into that, because...
Well, to the second question. Well, you talked about the costs of the highly automated driving and the cost behind that. I just want to say that beside the safetiness, we have other effects, other positive effects, like the comfort for the driver and like the rising efficiency. For example, when you are in a stop and go, then probably the driver can care about something else. We already have an assistance system in our cars for stop and go, for example, and this is just more comfort. and the customers also willing to pay money for that. So that's just more comfort. It's an asset, and also the efficiency. When you think about car fleets, when you think about smoother traffic or smoother driving behavior, then we got more efficiency, and you save money, for example. So these are other effects we have to look on it when we are talking about automatically driving.
Kazuhiro?
Okay, so let me answer also the economic point of view. So actually, even the 20 years, if I remember 20 years ago, we had a kind of autonomous car in the company. So in the test course, test proving ground, almost autonomous car was driving, actually. So that means that all of us had the technologies, but it was not ready yet for the mass production. But now many companies have equipped many safety features or driver aid features, and those can be the enablers for the autonomous car. And in that sense, I think that all of the car industry start to say we are ready to start. But still, we have sensors, we have the actuators, but still we need to learn more about the intelligence of the car. So that is a focus for the automobile industry now. That is what I understand.
Olaf, have your people thought about the upkeep of the infrastructure that would be a question that would be necessary in order to have one of those road trains, or is it just sort of car-to-car communication that is independent of anything on the side?
Our technology is completely independent. It is work with radar, radio, and other technologies. So in that is the cost related to the extra equipment on board. But that is, I think, paid off very quickly with the efficiency gains.
And we also had the side question in how far are all these equipments that have radar, that have microwave communications, never mind how low or how big, potentially harmful to human body. Okay, I don't know that many female truck drivers, but I'm very sure that that you look into aspects like that as well.
Of course we do in every technology, and we utilize the latest research, and I mean there's getting more and more research on this one now, and that is something that we have to keep an eye on all the time to make sure that it's not only sort of directly safe but also indirectly safe, the things that we're doing, and I think there is a lot of debate around this and a lot of research going on as well on this area.
But that might also sort of relate to, do we all need to carry a mobile phone on us, or should pregnant women not carry a mobile phone?
That's what I mean. That's a kind of discussion, but also a lot of research to make sure that we do look into those issues.
I hope we have attempted to start to answer some of the questions, but of course some of the questions will only arise when technologies are being developed, and therefore questions are being asked that are around the development of technologies. Now, I see we're almost at 6 o'clock, which means that I have the joy and pleasure to ask you to be very brief in your answers. In 5 years' time, Helmut, we will have...
In 5 years, we will close to our number of 1 million cars on German roads. We support the target of the German government, and we will work on it.
In 5 years' time, Doi-san.
Okay, I'm sure that we can see a part of the autonomous car functions, but I cannot say how far today.
Thank you. In 5 years' time, Olaf.
We will have platooing concepts so developed, so within the then coming 5 years, it will be ready to commercialize.
Sounds fascinating. In 5 years' time, Cisco will be also a car-to-car? No.
No, absolutely not. We want to stay away from the car in its entirety. No, but I think in 5 years' time we will see a couple of cities emerge as cities that have embraced the frameworks that are necessary to make autonomous work more than others. I truly believe it's a competition between cities who will set the framework successfully or not.
Last but not least, Brian, in 5 years' time.
We won't have fully automated vehicles, but there will be a dozen things that are far more fascinating.
Like? Okay. Okay. So we'll end with a question mark here, ladies and gentlemen. The good thing is when you look into the future, it's always quite worthwhile to look into the past. I can only say that I'm blessed to be able to moderate at conferences like this, whether it be IT or vehicle-oriented, because it just means that I always get a sniff of the future, and then when I actually live in it, I say, oh, well, that's what we talked about 10 years ago. So I think there will still be an element of surprise. Otherwise, I think what we're observing now is a slight change. It might be some elites, some urban elites who say we don't need to own a car anymore, but we want a sexy car to get into, or we want an electric car to hire. It might still be the young ones who say we don't need the ownership, but it might also be, I'm sorry if I sort of include some of you, it might also be the older generation that say, well, we don't really want to own a car, but yes, we want to be able, possibly with an autonomously driven car, to visit our grandchildren and be mobile as much as possible. So with questions like that, I leave you to a hopefully really great evening here in Leipzig. Enjoy, and I hope that you enjoyed this discussion a little bit as well. Thank you to my panel. Thank you very much.